Good morning. Today I want to talk about verse 13 of chapter 1 of the Sefer Yetzirah, the ancient Jewish book of creation. And this slideshow, it may be a little bit longer than some of the others I've done, so bear with me. And now let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, looks like we're ready to go. Sefer Yetzirah 1:13. As usual, I've got first the Hebrew, and then a translation by the late Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, and then we'll follow that with my translation. So let me read his translation here. He chose 3 letters from among the elementals in the mystery of the 3 mothers, Aleph, Mem, Shin. And he set them in his great name, and with them he sealed 6 extremities. 5. He sealed above and faced upward and sealed it with Yud He Vav. 6. He sealed below and faced downward and sealed it with He Yud Vav. 7. He sealed east and faced straight ahead and sealed it with Vav Yud He. 8. He sealed west and faced backward and sealed it with Vav He Yud. 9. He sealed south and faced to the right and sealed it with Yud Vav He. 10. He sealed north and faced to the left and sealed it with He Vav Yud. Okay, my translation comes from a slightly different version of the Sefer Yetzirah. So it'll be slightly different from what we just looked at. Okay, in my translation, it selected 3 letters from the plain ones. A mysterious council with the 3 mothers, Aleph, Mem, Shin, and it placed them in its great name, and sealed, completed with them 6 extremes. 5. It sealed, completed height, and turned its attention to ascent, and sealed, completed it with Yud He Vav. 6. It sealed, completed below, and turned its attention to beneath, and sealed, completed it with Yud Vav He. 7. It sealed, completed east, and turned its attention to front, and sealed, completed it with He Yud Vav. 8. It sealed, completed west, and turned its attention to behind, and sealed, completed it with He Vav Yud. 9. It sealed, completed south, and turned its attention to the right side, and sealed, completed it with Vav Yud He. 10. It sealed, completed north, and turned its attention to the left side, and sealed, completed it with Vav He Yud. Well, there is a lot to talk about here, and we will. Let me point out a few things, though, real quickly. First off, this verse and the few that have preceded it, they are finally delineating what are known as the 10 sefirot, which I think of as these 10 declarations that God used to create the universe. Okay? Second, the most sacred name for God in Judaism is spelled Yud He Vav He, and it's generally not pronounced. We usually just say something like Lord or the Eternal in its place. But that 4-letter name uses 3 letters, Yud, Vav, and He. From those 3 letters, you can make 6 different permutations. And here, those 6 permutations are being associated with 6 directions, the 6 directions of physical space. Okay, so this is relating these things to the universe and its creation. Each letter combination is going to represent a particular direction that was created. Okay, Well, let's continue on to the next slide. As we will soon see, the letters Aleph, Mem, and Shin are known as the three mother letters, and they correspond to air, water, and fire. Now, I should point out real quickly, we're talking about opposites here. Remember, previous verses and our previous discussion explained how the basic pattern in creation, according to Jewish mysticism, is you have one thing opposite another, and then some sort of interaction between those two opposites. So with the three mother letters, those opposites are represented by water and fire, and air, which you could also think of as the steam that's created when water and fire come together. It represents the interaction, the communication between these opposites. Okay, now let me continue with the slides, beginning with this is. This is because the Hebrew word for air is avir, spelled aleph vav yud resh. The Hebrew word for water is mayim, spelled mem yud mem, and the Hebrew word for fire is esh, spelled aleph shin. Also, to follow our pattern of three, water and fire are opposites, and air is a substance that mediates between the two. Okay, the most sacred name for God in Hebrew is spelled Yud He Vav He, and the letters Yud, He, and Vav are called father letters. We have Aleph corresponding to Yud, Mem corresponds to He, and Shin corresponds to Vav. Furthermore, with three letters such as Yud, He, and Vav, 6 different permutations are possible, and these are used to define and seal the 6 directions. And by sealing, we mean completing and establishing a boundary that will define 3-dimensional space. Okay, continuing. There are variations from one ancient text to another regarding the order in which the permutations are presented, but the arrangement given in the passage above, which I've taken from the short version of the Sefer Yetzirah, is, in my opinion, the best in that it represents a gradual transition from spirit to matter, from perceived holiness to concealed holiness. Okay. Actually, I should probably reverse that and say from concealed holiness to perceived holiness as we go from spirit to matter. So I'll make that change later. All right. To understand the translation, you have to know that God is often referred to in mystical literature as the king, represented by Yud, the first letter in God's name, and the creation is referred to as the daughter, represented by He, the second and last letter in God's name. Additionally, the letter Vav is a connective that in Hebrew grammar is the word and thus it represents joining or union. Hence, a permutation such as Yud He Vav can now be interpreted as king, daughter, united, a union between opposites with nothing intervening. The complete list of permutations and a table showing the permutations used in the other major versions of the text are given on the next slide. So here we have it. There are 4 major versions of the Sefer Yetzirah. The Gra version, that stands for Gaon, Rabbi Eliyahu. He was known as the Gaon or Genius of Vilna. The short version, which I use here, the long version, and then we have the Sadia version, which is, let's see, pretty similar to the short version. It looks like it only has a little change or deviation right here, where the short version, well, these two, for East and West, they're a little different in the short version and the Sadia version. Okay, now let me explain each of these permutations. So we start with Yud He Vav, king, daughter united. The king and the daughter are one. and there is no separation between them. We have maximum oneness and holiness, and the direction for this is above. Okay, next we have Yud Vav He, king and daughter. The Vav now creates separation between the king and the daughter, but the permutation still begins with the king, one level down in holiness, and the direction is below. Hey Yud Vav, daughter king united. The daughter and the king are together, but the daughter appears first. The focus now is not on spirit, but on the creation as indicated by the first letter He. And again, there has been a decrease in the perception of holiness. The king is partially obscured by the daughter. One more level of decrease in the degree to which the king is revealed, and the direction is east. Let me go back for a second here. I just want to pause one thing that I questioned earlier. Okay. Let's see, back on this slide, I said that maybe I should have concealed holiness, have things moving from concealed holiness to perceived holiness. Actually, the way I have it is correct here. The reason I was thinking maybe I should change that is because God, in God's true nature, is usually concealed. It's a mystery, as opposed to this physical world, which is what is revealed. Okay, but when we go up to this highest realm, if we're in that highest realm, that's where it's easier to perceive the holiness of God. When we come down to the physical world, that's where the holiness of God tends to get covered up and concealed. So, my apologies for what I said earlier. The way I have this is in the correct order. As we make this gradual transition from spirit to matter, we are moving from perceived holiness, holiness which is easier to see when we're in spirit, to concealed holiness, holiness which is more difficult to see when we're enveloped in matter. Okay, now let's go back and continue with what we had here. Okay, I think we left with this one, Hey Yud Vav, where holiness is concealed just a bit more, and the direction was east. Now, if we wanted to conceal holiness even more, we could put this Vav in between the Hey and the Yud, and that's what's going to come next. So, Hey Vav Yud, daughter and king. The Vav once again creates separation between the daughter and the king, and the king appears last while the daughter appears first. Holiness is even more concealed, another decrease in holiness by one level, and the direction is west. Now, Vav Yud He, united, king, daughter. This time, neither the Yud nor the He appears first. The focus is on relationships between things, as indicated by the leading letter Vav. Again, holiness has been obscured by one more level, and the direction is south. And I note below that since Vav represents the word and in Hebrew, it establishes a connection or relationship between two objects, A and B. So now, with Vav appearing first, the focus is more on relationships. When the letter Yud appears first, it's the highest level of holiness that we focus on. When the letter He appears first, it's the holiness of the creation, sort of like the holiness of Mother Earth, that is more prominent. But now with Vav appearing first, it's the relationships between things that is being emphasized. Okay, And last, we have Vav He Yud, united daughter king. And our final direction, the Vav appears first and the Yud appears last. Thus the king is hidden or obscured to the utmost, as one would expect in the far north, where life can be harsh, and the bounty found in the south is no longer present. Minimum revealed holiness, north. The direction is north. Now we could also liken this to when we're suffering or undergoing any sort of harshness in life. When life is very harsh, that makes it more difficult to experience things like love and oneness and God and happiness and joy. So God's greatness, this absolute unity, absolute love, that is when it's most obscured, when life is harsh. And because things are harsh in the north, that is the direction that this corresponds to. Okay, the letter Yud begins the permutations on the up-down axis. The letter He begins those on the east-west axis. And the letter Vav begins the permutations found on the north-south axis. Since these father letters correspond to Aleph, Mem, and Shin, this also tells us that the up-down axis corresponds to Aleph, the east-west axis corresponds to Mem, and the north-south axis corresponds to Shin. Thus, the three mother letters define three-dimensional space. Also, don't forget that the up-down axis is the axis of spirit. The east-west axis is the axis of the earth or creation, and the north-south axis is the axis of relationship. And these in turn correspond to air, water, and fire. Now, you might get a glimmer of where the Sefer Yetzirah is headed here. We talk about these 10 sefirot. God created his world with these 10 declarations. These 10 declarations are the 10 sefirot, the 10 utterances. And we're actually beginning to define sort of a three-dimensional cube. What some non-Jewish occultists have called the cube of space, and I also like to use that term because I think it's very descriptive. But we're defining here, we're associating these letters, these sefirot, with three spatial axes that define three-dimensional space, and then the six directions that complete this three-dimensional cube of space as our early model for the universe, for the creation. Okay, and let's see, let's move on here. Oh, that's the last slide. So we've gotten it all, so let me stop sharing. And that is going to be it for today. So we're almost at the end of chapter 1. We just have one more verse that wraps everything up, and then we're going to look at some selected verses from other chapters. We're not going to do every single verse right now in the Sefer Yetzirah. We're just trying to give sort of an overview of the essence of Jewish mysticism. And as we finish with the Sefer Yetzirah, we're also going to look at a few select passages from the Zohar that tell us what things are most important. So, shalom, have a good week. I hope to see you later.